service through his devotees. If we serve the devotees, Krishna will become pleased with that. That's why rendering service to the devotee is so important. Krishna consciousness becomes real, tangible, appealing when we are in the association of devotees, especially the advanced devotees, and serving them. Association leads to service. Hearing and chanting are also a way of rendering service. Rendering service to devotees. Oh, sorry. Serving the Lord according to one's position. It refers to celebrating the festivals of the Lord according to our financial capacity. Some devotees may have a hard time going to the temple because of the long commute, and they may have home deities. Our home deities should be considered as an expansion of the temple deities. When we have deities at home, that is to expand our service to Krishna, not to replace from going to the temple. Whenever there is a festival, we should go to the temple, but if at all possible, then we can render service to our home deity. Offer our wealth, life, words, etc. to the deity. Bring something to the deity when we go to the temple. The mood of a devotee should be to increase the devotional service to the Lord. Ram Tulsi Mataji will be present in the next slide. Mataji. Mataji is on mute.
Ram Tulsi Mataji, I think you're on mute.
Hare Krishna, we cannot still hear Mataji.
Mataji, you're on mute.
Mata is not on the mute, Prabhu, but I think something else is also happening.
Okay. Okay, so of all the 12 months in the Vedic calendar, the month of Kartik is the most special. And devotees, we know that the month of Damodar it's also one of the names of Srimati Radharani, right? So she's very important in the month of Kartik.
Mataji, can you hear us? Ram Tulsi Mataji, can you hear us?
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, Mataji.
Mataji, you were on mute so far. You may want to restart. We just were able to hear you, but you were on mute so far. So maybe you want to quickly restart.
Sorry, am I still on mute?
No, now we can hear you, but
you can hear me now.
To
Okay.
begin with. So we missed the beginning part of you.
So of all the 12 months, we know that Kartik is the most special. And so apart from being the month, be known as the month of Damodar, which is the name of Krishna, the word Kartik is also one of the names of Srimati Radharani. So if this is a month that the devotees can make spiritual advancement, even just doing a little bit of devotional service. Devotees observe the month of Kartik, especially we see in Vrindavan. Many devotees go to Vrindavan for the month of Kartik. And I heard this year, because there was a pandemic for a couple of years, this year apparently for Kartik, it was unreal because everybody came for Kartik, they said. And Srimati Radharani gives many blessings to the devotees during Kartik, right? So the little bit of service that we do in Vrindavan can be multiplied so many thousands of times. And it's just by the blessings of Srimati Radharani. Devotees perform extra and special savas just to please Radharani. They do more Nam Japa and Kirtan, extra prayers, extra puja, extra reading. Devotees even take vows during the month of Kartik. Vaishnava Seva and more, the devotees perform all for the pleasure and happiness of Srimati Radharani. This is the goal of our sadhana. Our sadhana is to please, and our prajartana is to please Srimati Radharani. Okay, if we please her, then she approaches Krishna for us, and we can only approach Krishna through Srimati Radharani. We observe Kartik Vrat only for the purpose of bringing more joy to Radhika, and if Radharani so desires, she will be compassionate to us, purify us, and make us eligible to attain her eternal divine service in the groves of Vrindavan. Observing festivals celebrating the Lord's activities. Many thousands and millions of living entities are wandering within this material world, and some of them, by the grace of Lord Krishna and the spiritual master, can get the seed of devotional service. We must plant the seed in the field of the heart, just as the gardener sows the seed of a valuable tree. So these occasions, these festivals are there for us for remembering the Lord and his pure devotees, such as Janmashtami, Vyasa Puja, and Radhastami, and other festivals, just like Ram Navami we just had recently, stimulate the ecstatic love of Krishna and the deities. Joining in these activities is just like pouring water on the creeper of devotion. As one hears and chants the holy name of the Supreme Lord, or takes part in discussions of devotional service in a society of pure devotees, the plant of devotional service sprouts from the seed of devotion and begins to grow freely. When fully grown, it transcends the length and breadth of the universe and enters the effulgence that pervades the spiritual world. The plant penetrates this effulgence and then gradually enters the planet known as Goloka Vrindavan, where it takes shelter at the lotus feet of Krishna. After attaining this position, the plant produces the fruit known as love of God. That is the ultimate goal of devotional service and the perfection of human life. Devotees take advantage of these festive days to glorify their lordships, Sri Radha and Krishna, and the pure devotee Srila Prabhupada, serving the deity with great devotion. Deity worship is practical devotional service. We are eternal servants of Krishna, and this deity worship allows us to begin our service to Krishna, to cook for him, to dress him, to sing for him, to clean for him. In this way, we learn how to serve the Lord properly. It is a practical way of learning to please the Lord and serve the Lord and his devotees. The main reason for second initiation is to allow us to practice deity worship and thus come closer to Krishna. When one sees the deity, he becomes attracted by that form, because by Krishna's mercy, if one has some affection for the deity, one does not see metal or stone. He sees Krishna and his heart becomes soft, full of love to see the beautiful form of the deity. Srila Prabhupada did mention to us that in order for us to minimize our lusty desires and to get rid of our lusty desires is to dress Krishna and the beautiful form of Krishna and Radha, and our love for them will grow and becomes spiritual. It's such a spiritual love. So deity worship is very important for devotees. And as grihastas, it's also important for us to do deity worship. And the next one is recitation of Srimad Bhagavatam among devotees. One should taste the meaning of Srimad Bhagavatam in the association of pure devotees. One should not associate with professional Bhagavatam reciters. We see there are a lot of professional Bhagavatam reciters. They might know the Bhagavatam by heart and they might sing it beautifully, but if it's not from a pure devotee, then it won't increase the bhakti in our heart, and it becomes like poison touched by the lips of the serpent, right? The Srimad Bhagavatam can be recited only by one who has unflinching faith in the lotus feet of Krishna and his devotee, the spiritual master. These are the injunctions of the Vedic literature, Shruti and Smriti. Those who are not in the disciplic succession and who are not pure devotees cannot understand the real mysterious objective of Srimad Bhagavatam and Srimad Bhagavad Gita. So we should not listen to Bhagavatam from the professional reciters. We should always listen to Bhagavatam from the devotees, associating with advanced devotees. In the Hari Bhakti Sudadaya, there is conversation between Prahlad Maharaj and his father, Hiranyakashipu, in which Hiranyakashipu addresses Prahlad in this way. My dear son, Association is very important. It acts just like a crystal stone, which will reflect anything which is put before it. So this is Hiranyakashipu is talking to his son. And of course, he's talking about his association. Similarly, if we associate with the flower-like devotees of the Lord, and if our hearts are crystal clear, then certainly the same action will be there. If the recipient of spiritual knowledge and the deliverer of spiritual knowledge are sincere and bona fide, there will be excellent results. So whenever we get a chance, we should try to associate with devotees, right? To have devotee sangha. Not just thinking of the pure devotees, okay? Not just the sannyasis and gurus, but we should also associate amongst ourselves, devotees amongst ourselves, because devotee sangha is very, very important for all of us. And especially for me, I find devotee sangha is very important. Chanting the holy name of the Lord. Krishna's name is complete and it's the form of all transcendental kneelers. It is not materialistic and it is no less powerful than Krishna himself. Krishna's name is not contaminated by the material energy. Krishna's name is always liberated and spiritual and never conditioned by the laws of material nature. This is because the name of Krishna and Krishna himself are identical. The holy name is Krishna, and as we surrender to Krishna through his holy name, Krishna reciprocates accordingly. If we please Krishna by our service, Krishna will be pleased to reveal himself to us. Prabhupada said everything is contained in the Maha Mantra. In fact, Srila Prabhupada said, we can actually go back to Godhead with just first initiation, just Harinam initiation. Okay, that's how powerful Krishna's name is. And then we talk, so one of the other ones is performing devotional service in Kartik. And it was very similar to, or maybe he included that slide again. Yeah, okay, so they include the slide again. So there was another one very similar. I know I worked on another one very similar about doing service in Kartik, and it was very similar to the first slide, but this is just a repeat, so I'm not going to go over that. Living in Mathura, okay? Living in Mathura, in order to attain the eligibility to reside in Mathura, it is necessary to practice association with the sadhus, chant the holy name, listen to the Bhagavatam, and worship the lotus feet of the Lord with bhakti. But Kamsa was a resident of Mathura, but he did not attain service to Lord Krishna because he desired his own pleasure, not the pleasure of the Lord. Okay, so when we can live in Mathura, Vrindavan, Mayapur, as long as we with the mood of that we are the servant of the Lord and we are serving the Lord for his pleasure. We're not there for our own pleasure. Okay, it says in the scriptures, Mathura is more glorious than Vaikuntha. In Mathura, everything and everyone is engaged in the service of Krishna. And when you go to, and Vrindavan is considered Mathura also because it is in the same district. And when you go there, everybody's chanting Radhe Radhe. Everybody is in the mood of serving Radha Krishna. We should have this attitude while living in Mathura. Every one of them is my guru, the servant of my Krishna. If we think like this, only then is it possible for us to be residents of Mathura. And I do want to say that wherever we are, we live, whichever state we're living into, but in the association of devotees and in the temple, it can be, our homes also can become like Vrindavan, Mathura, Mayapur, if we live with the principles Srila Prabhupada gave us. Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Ramatis Mataji and Shobhamai Mataji and the group. Really liked the aesthetics of the PowerPoint. I think you selected a very parchment kind of look. It gives the sense of an ancient scripture. And the content was also very good. Thank you for it. Let's move on to the next presentation. I think it's group 4, doing chapter 13.
Hare Krishna. I'll be presenting for group 4. Let me try to present. Can you see the screen?
Yeah.
Okay. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Name. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Prachanine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyatya Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So the last we discussed, we have been discussing the 64 angas of bhakti. The last 5 angas are the most potent forms of devotional service. They're like Krishna's mercy. The 5 angas, the last 5 angas are worshipping the deity of the Lord, relishing Srimad Bhagavatam, serving a devotee, chanting the holy names of the Lord, and residing in Mathura. So even Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela, chapter 22, 133rd verse says, the power of these 5 principles is very wonderful and difficult to understand. Even without faith in them, a person who is offenseless can awaken his dormant love of Krishna simply by being a little connected with them. So these 5 forms of devotional service, we do this, even a neophyte can attain the level of bhava. So the first one, the power of attachment to serving the deity's lotus feet, right? So this verse from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.2.239, this is the gopi saying to another gopi, "Oh, my friend, if you desire to enjoy with your friends and relatives, then do not look upon the form of the Lord called Govinda, wandering near Keshi Tirtha on the bank of the Yamuna river with a slight smile on his lips, posed in his threefold bending posture, eyes glancing everywhere in a crooked fashion, flute placed on his red lower lip like a tender bud and shining gloriously with the peacock feather." So this is a metaphor. It's telling in an indirect way that if we really want to get rid of our material desires, we should serve the Lord. And how do we remember the Lord? Because we are in our homes, we cannot go to the temple all the time. We should keep the deities at home, serve them. As Ram Tulsi Mataji was saying, this is where we have a sensual, we have a sensory perception. We have direct service to the Lord because everything is coming from Krishna and all the forms coming from Krishna are Vishnu Tattva. And this Vishnu Tattva is appearing in this material form world as the deities. So when we attach ourselves to serving the deity's lotus feet, our devotion grows, the Bhakti Lata Brij grows. And we should look at the deity, serve the deity, and start our meditation looking at the deities from the lotus feet and going up to the head. So our devotion, our attraction, our relationship with Krishna grows when we do the deity worship. And there is another verse in Srimad Bhagavatam which gives again the power of deity worship, which is from 10th canto, 12th chapter, 39th verse. It says, if even only once or even by force one brings the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead into one's mind, one can attain the supreme salvation by the mercy of Krishna, as did Aghasur. What then is to be said of those whose hearts the Supreme Personality of Godhead enters when he appears as an incarnation, or those who always think of the lotus feet of the Lord, who is the source of the transcendental bliss for all living entities and by whom all illusion is completely removed, right? So even Aghasur, who is trying to do harm to the Lord, he did service because he became an instrument where the friends of Krishna can have a playtime, and Krishna enters them, he purifies them, he sees the form of the Lord. And if we can see the form of the Lord similarly in the deities, because deities are none other than Krishna, we can also have that kind of pleasure. We can go back to Golok Vrindavan. So that we should again, and Prabhupada has given this 5 important, potent forms of the bhakti in the morning program. So if you look at the morning program, starts with Mangala Arati. So that is deity worship. And then you have the japa, the chanting the holy names. You have devotee association when they come to the temple. And you are going to a dham, even though it's not Vrindavan dham or it's not Mathura dham, but it's still, Prabhupada used to say, these temples are Vaikuntha. So those and relishing Srimad Bhagavatam, because in the morning program you're doing the Bhagavatam class. So Prabhupada incorporated all these 5 potent forms of devotional service in the morning program. So if we can do these morning programs regularly, we can see a big change in our the level in our devotional service. It'll get us closer to Krishna. The second aspect, I'll try to go faster. The second aspect, the potent form, is relishing Srimad Bhagavatam, right? Even in Srimad Bhagavatam, the third verse itself, it says, Negama kalpa taror galitam phalam sukha mukad amrita drava samyutam pibata bhagavatam rasam alayam muhur aho rasika bhuvi bhavukaha. So it says, O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desired tree of Vedic literature. It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful, although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. So this is so sweet, because even the Sukadeva Goswami has touched it. It's like a Amala Purana. Lord Chaitanya said, this is Amala Purana. It's the spotless Puran. And it can give us all bhakti. Wherever we try to lick it, it is full of juice. There is no defect. It's spotless. So this has a lot of potency. Even if you look at Sukadeva Goswami, he was a realized soul, right? He was impersonalist. But when he heard the 2 verses of Srimad Bhagavatam, his heart changed. His heart changed completely, and he surrendered to that Bhagavan, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He was no more an impersonalist. That is the power of Srimad Bhagavatam. And then in Srimad Bhagavatam itself, in 1.7.7, it says, simply by giving oral reception to this Vedic literature, the feeling for loving devotional service to Lord Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, sprouts up at once to extinguish the fire of lamentation, illusion, and fearfulness. So it's going to make us closer to Krishna. It's going to make us detached from the material things, and we will be attached to Krishna. That's the power of Srimad Bhagavatam. So the third most potent devotional service aspect is association of like-minded, affectionate devotees, the association of devotees. Right? And Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela 22.83, it says, the root cause of devotional service to Lord Krishna is association with advanced devotees. Even when one's dormant love for Krishna awakens, association with devotees is still most essential. We have heard the stories of Bharat Maharaj. He went to the forest, didn't have devotee association, how he fell down. And we've heard also the story of Mrigari, right? The devotee association makes him such a pure bhakta. So devotee association is needed if we are a neophyte or if we are an advanced devotee. Then Prabhupada says that unless one is associated with devotees, one's devotional service does not mature and become distinct from material activities. So devotee association is another potent form, which is very much needed in all our in all the stages of bhakti. And then in Srimad Bhagavatam 1.18.13 says, the value of a moment's association with the devotee of the Lord cannot be even compared to the attainment of heavenly planets or liberation from matter. And what to speak of worldly benedictions in the form of material prosperity, which are those who are meant for death. So it's like, we cannot compare devotee association with anything. It's like comparing a mustard seed with a Meru mountain. We cannot compare that. It is so high. The fourth potent devotional service anga is chanting the Lord's names. And it says that Krishna's name is Krishna himself, right? It's mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela 17:133. Nama Chintamani Krishna's Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha Purna Shuddho Nitya Mukto Abhinnatvam Nama Namino. The holy name of Krishna is transcendently blissful. It bestows all spiritual benedictions, for it is Krishna himself, the reservoir of all pleasure. Krishna's name is complete, and it is the form of all transcendental mellows. It is not a material name under any condition, and is no less powerful than Krishna himself. Since Krishna's name is not contaminated by the material qualities, there is no question of its being involved with Maya. Krishna's name is always liberated and spiritual. It is never conditioned by the laws of material nature. This is because the name of Krishna and Krishna himself are identical. Even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his Shishtastakam says that when we chant the holy names, it's destroying our material anarthas. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also says, Harer Nam, Harer Nam, Harer Nam, Eva Kevalam, Kalau Nastev, Kalau Nastev, Kalau Nastev, Gatir Anyatha. So the chanting of the names in the whole in this age of Kali is the only effective way. And then another quote, I will not go into the detail. Again, this is another from Padma Purana, but again, it's trying to say that unless we do service with our chanting of the holy name and eat the remnants of the Lord's food, our tongue will not be purified. Once our tongue is purified, we will gradually come to understand who Krishna really is. And then the fifth potent form is residing in Mathura, right? When we go to the holy dham, we have three things going on. We have sensory perception, because we are looking at the place, like, so we're looking at Yamuna, we're looking at the place where Damodar Leela happened, we're looking at the Kaliya Ghat, we're looking at Govardhan. So our mind automatically goes to those pastimes. And then there's this textual description, whatever we have read in the scriptures, or some Maharaj saying a katha, that katha then goes into our ears and transforms our. And so then the third part is devotional contemplation. When all these things combine, when we live in the dham, when we go for this dham villages, or even live there, this is a great potent form. And sometimes it's not possible to live in the dham all the time. We are working, we have jobs. But Prabhupada used to say that we should live in our mind, in the dham in our mind, like advanced devotees. They just, when they meditate, when they chant, they go to Vrindavan when they are chanting. Or take the example of, again, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. When he used to see any river, he used to be in ecstasy and think that it is Yamuna. When he used to see a hill, he used to think this is Govardhan. So those are the glories of residing in the dham. That mukti we can receive anywhere, but bhakti, the dhams can give, right? So these angas, these 5 angas are extraordinary. And it can get us to the stage of bhava. And these might seem that these are overestimations, but in certain cases, but it's not overestimations. If we think about when just by smelling the tulsi leaves, the Sanat Kumaras, they became devotees. If we think about the pastime of Bhayahari, the devotee association, there's so many, like even we think about Dhruva Maharaj, he was in the mode of passion, but when he got the devotee association, he got the mantra from Narad Muni, and he said, I want devotee association. He became a pure bhakta of the Lord. So these are not exaggerations. These are not overestimations. If we execute them offensively, we can get to the stage of bhava. So with that being said, I conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Bhaktivinoda Prabhu. Thank you very much. Excellent presentation, excellent slide. I really liked your energy and enthusiasm. I could feel the 5 items inspiring you, and they inspired everyone else. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Please make sure to share your presentations in the group. So there is one chapter left that I will cover, which is the 14th chapter, and it talks about So Rupa Goswami takes a little bit of a detour on this chapter, in the sense that he's so far talking about the angas of bhakti, and now he talks about the angas that may look like bhakti but are actually not bhakti. Right. So let me share my screen and then we can go through it. It's a very straightforward chapter, so I don't anticipate spending a lot of time. Let's see. Okay, so chapter 14. So with this, the discussion on the 64 items of Sadhana Vedi Bhakti is concluded, right? So far, he has been talking about those that are considered to be angas of bhakti, and then he distills out of the 64 the 5 potent items that were just presented. Now he will talk about items that look like they are angas of bhakti, may be considered to be angas of bhakti, but are not really. So they are not really unfavorable to bhakti. They could be favorable, but they are not essential elements as the other 64 are. So sadhana bhakti, as we know, is that which allows us to fix our mind on Krishna, right? So Rupa Goswami talks about 2 items, Gyan and Vairagya, which may look like they are angas of bhakti, but are actually not. And he'll explain more so why. So in Gyan, the focus is in distilling matter and spirit, right? That's the purpose of Gyan, that you look at what the Pradhan is made of, what the Mahatattva is made of, what Prakriti is made of, the Panch Mahabhuta, the 3 subtle elements. So the idea is to continue to distill matter until you identify spirit, not necessarily Krishna, right? So while it is leading one to the spiritual platform, it is not really an anga of bhakti. Similarly, in Vairagya, the focus is on renunciation. So while there is detachment, it is not necessarily accompanied with attachment. So it is not considered to be a part of sadhana bhakti. Now the reason that they're confused is because they are conducive to bhakti. Because once we understand we are not matter, but we are spirit, then the next question becomes that who is the original spirit? And that can lead us to Krishna. Similarly, when one is materially detached, then he is in a better position to develop spiritual attachment, right? So they can help. They can impede also, but properly used, they can help. Okay. So this point is made over here, which is a reminder of the 5th chapter, that bhakti is ahitukiya pratiyata, right? It is completely independent and self-sufficient. In fact, when Rupa Goswami talks about bhakti, he says, Anna Vilashata Shunyam Jnana Karmadi Anavratam. Right? He calls it out, that it should be free of jnana and karma and etc., including vairagya. So this distinction needs to be clear. That they may be supporting angas of bhakti, but they can never be the essential items of bhakti. And then Rupa Goswami says that they can actually harm bhakti also. Right? That too much of renunciation, it makes the heart hard. It makes the heart steel framed. Right? So in a hard heart, the Bhakti Lata beach finds it difficult to grow roots. Gyan also has the same effect. We empirically see that people who are too much immersed into Gyan, they become too analytical. Right? If they see somebody suffering, they will put on the perspective of Gyan and say, well, there is karma, there is this law of karma. Undoubtedly, he did impious activities in the past life, he's suffering from it. And all of it is true. But it impedes the flow of compassion. It impedes the opening of the heart to receive the mercy. So now we come to one of the very, very key aspects of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, right, which basically sets Gaudiya Vaishnavism separate and actually makes it probably the most important sampradaya, is the notion of Yukta Vairagya. So having rejected Vairagya, then Mahaprabhu and in the Vaishnava theology, they introduced the notion of Yukta Vairagya, where the detachment is internal. Everybody can use everything in the service of Krishna. And we see the printing press. Srila Prabhupada was very expert in using technology. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he would meet with princes and kings, travel about in a Rolls Royce. He was criticized by the other sannyasis that this is not, that sannyasi should be Vairagi. And Bhaktisiddhanta would laugh because he was preaching. That is Yukta Vairagya. It's famous for Anasaktasya Vishena Tartum Puyunjata Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe Yuktam Vairagya Muchyate. Right? This is the essential definition of Yukta Vairagya. That without personal attachment, one should accept whatever can be used to please Krishna and reject everything else. So there is still the notion of rejection. But the frame that one uses to reject is in connection with Krishna. That can I use this in the service of Krishna? Once one of devotees, he went to his Guru Maharaj and said that, Maharaj, I want to buy a lottery ticket every day, and if I win, I will give the money to the temple. And his Guru Maharaj says that Krishna has all the money in the world. So don't worry about it. Instead of buying a lottery ticket every day, you go and preach to somebody every day. That is a more effective use of your time. So under the guise of Yukta Vairagya, one should not try and adopt anything and everything. Right? And Rupa Goswami clearly gives what the index is. That it should be used to please Krishna. Now one may say, how do we know if it will please Krishna? And we don't have a direct line to Krishna, right? So how do we know it will please Krishna? But we know there are different indices. If it pleases Guru, it pleases Krishna. If it increases your attraction to Krishna, it pleases Krishna. If it improves your chanting, it pleases Krishna. If it pleases other devotees, it pleases Krishna. Right? So there are so many ways that we can ascertain it. So Srila Prabhupada, as I mentioned, he embodied this mood of Yukta Vairagya. He was very expert actually in seeing and figuring out how to use. Once one of Prabhupada's disciples showed him a newspaper, and in the newspaper there was a picture of a sadhu, and somebody was offering him a plate full of money, and the sadhu had his hand behind his back, and the caption said the sadhu wants nothing to do with money. And Prabhupada looked at it and he laughed, and he said, I would take all the money and I would use it in Krishna's service. So that is the mood of an advanced devotee, right? We see that how he's using microphone, recordings. Prasadam is obviously one of the potent ways of engaging the senses in the service of Krishna. And it is also one of the ways where Yukta Vairagya may be misused. Right? One may eat excessively. There was once a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, and he was very much into prasad. Right? So he was becoming more and more obese. When he met one of his godbrother, and his godbrother was like, "What's happening, Prabhu? You're putting on so much of weight." And then he said, "This is 100% Krishna Prasad." So sometimes we use Krishna to satisfy our tongue, but it should be the other way around, right? And again, we know that when Krishna will be happy, and it's okay to call devotees to your house and cook samchut prasadam for them. The devotees will be happy. It's even okay to cook samchut prasadam for yourself, right? If it is offered with love and devotion. So there is a fine line that one should follow. So along with the Yukta Vairagya also comes the companion opposite form, which is Phalgu Vairagya. Phalgu Vairagya is false renunciation, right? False renunciation is essentially simply giving up everything without understanding how it can be used in Krishna's service. That is Phalgu Vairagya, right? Whether it is external renunciation while your mind is absorbed in the object, or giving for the sake of fame and glory, or just giving up because of a lack of understanding. That is Phalgu Vairagya. And Rupa Goswami says that what does this do? It can harm your bhakti. It can harden your heart. It can impede the way that you can serve Krishna and his devotees. Some other items that look like bhakti, but are not necessarily bhakti. So service executed through wealth and followers. So a person may be very wealthy and followers. So a person may, initiating spiritual master may have hundreds and thousands of disciples. So the fact that he is initiating disciples is an act of devotional service, because he is connecting a soul to the sampradaya, to Krishna, engaging them in bhakti. That is devotional service. However, the subsequent worship that is performed by the disciple is not to be considered as an anga of bhakti of the Guru. So it is their own devotional service, not that of the Guru. So the Guru must not think that my disciples are going around and doing so much of bhakti, so I am getting a portion of all of it. Doesn't happen that way. Right? Now, he could still guide the disciples. That would be an anga of bhakti. That's his service. Make more disciples. That is an anga of bhakti. But should not think that my disciples are distributing books, so I am distributing books. My disciples are making temples, so I am making temples. It does not work like that. Similarly, wealth. An opulent person, he may give money to build a temple. That's bhakti. That's an anga of bhakti. But then whatever worship that's being done in the temple, the person does not be a part of that devotional process. So the reason these are called out is to disambiguate any conceptions in a person. The person may give a temple and may give money to a temple and say, as long as there is worship being done in the temple, I am accruing the benefit. It does not happen that way. Right? So person needs to be actively engaged. So we did Gyan and Vairagya, we did wealth and followers. Now the last is saintly qualities. So these are essentially qualities that you will recognize as those in the mode of goodness. Ahimsa, Brahmacharya, Satyam. So they are favorable, but because they do not directly cause the remembrance of Krishna, they are not angas of sadhana bhakti. Right? So one can be, one can follow ahimsa. Right? One can be a vegetarian. Once a disciple came to Prabhupada and said that Prabhupada, I don't think it was a disciple, I think it was somebody that Prabhupada met. And he said, Swamiji, I have never eaten meat in my life. I'm a vegetarian for all my life. And Prabhupada said, even pigeons are vegetarian for all their lives. And all they do is have sex. So at one point, Prabhupada would encourage vegetarianism when he would meet, especially when he would meet Christian priests. He would say that your 10 commandments include thou shalt not kill. Why do you kill animals? Don't kill animals. So he would preach strongly. He would not talk about Krishna to them, right? Because they were not ready to hear about Krishna, but at least he wanted them to stop being impious, so that maybe that quality will attract devotion, but does not automatically result in bhakti. Right? The example is that of Narad Muni, that there was this hunter, and he was famous for half killing animals. Right? So his name was Migrari. He was famous for half killing animals. Then he would torture them to death. So Narad Muni preached to him, and then he became so saintly that once Narad Muni went to meet him again, then he was walking in a zigzag way so that he does not step on any insects. And then he saw some insects on the ground. And then with his chadar, he was trying to shoo them away. So these qualities appear as a byproduct of bhakti. They are not the cause of bhakti. They appear as a byproduct of bhakti. So all these qualities that we have spoken, Gyan, Vairagya, wealth, followers, Brahmacharya, Ahimsa, they are there in devotees. That's why they're confused. They're not the cause of bhakti. They're caused by bhakti. Right? So that's why Rupa Goswami is making this point, that one should always make a distinction between cause and effect. Now, in the Bhagavatam, Prahlad Maharaj talks about the 9 angas of bhakti, and the point is made is that these how do these 64 angas relate with those 9? right? So the point that is made is that these 64 angas are expansion of those 9, right? So how do you practice those 9 angas? That is given in these 64 angas. And one can achieve ecstatic love by following either one anga of bhakti, 2, or all 9 of them. And then the 9 angas are Shravana, Kirtana, Smaran, that by hearing Parishad Maharaj became perfect. By chanting, which is reciting Bhagavatam, Sukadev Goswami became perfect. By Smaranam, by remembering, Prahlad Maharaj became perfect. By Vandanam, reciting praise, when Akrura went to Braja, he recited these beautiful prayers, and that's how he became perfect. Then Padya Seva, Lakshmi Devi, she's already perfect, but she perfectly executes that service. Through Archanam, deity worship, Prithu Maharaj became perfect. Then Dasyam, servitude, Hanuman became perfect. Sakhya, Arjun became perfect. And Atmanivedan is Bali Maharaj. He gave everything to Vamandev. And Maharaj Ambarish is special because he practiced all the 9 angas of Bhakti. So this ends the section on Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. Now what follows after this is a summary of the other 2 parts of Bhakti, which is Bhava Bhakti and Prema Bhakti. So we won't have time for question answers today. We will start the next session class with question answers, and also the concluding group presentations. So chapter 15 is a very, very small chapter. So that's why and they clump together. So I combined 15 and 16. This is essentially Raghunath Bhakti. 17th and 18th are Bhava Bhakti, but both are slightly different aspects of Bhava Bhakti. 19th is a relatively small chapter of Prema Bhakti, right? So in the next discussion, we will start off with any question and answers, and then after that we will have group 1 and group 2 present these 3 chapters. And then in the class after that, we will complete the NOD, and we should have about half an hour left, which we can open up for any questions on all the 19 chapters, any questions on the exam, etc. Okay, so I'm going to stop over here. Thank you so much for your patient listening, and I look forward to attending the presentations next week. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyaeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Anantakoti Vaishnavrinda ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hari Gaur Premanand.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Thank you,
Thank
Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.